Oliveira. I'm your host today. I'm the president of this Congress, and I'm very glad to be with you today. So welcome to our first webinar of this year, 2021. We're adding another jewel to the free sessions of the first part of the Groundwater World Congress, a joint achievement of IAH, the International Association of Hydrogeologists, the ALSUD, the Latin American Association of Hydrogeologists, and ABAS, the Brazilian Association of Groundwater. We started with 8 sessions in September when we reached more than 10,000 views. Wow, that is a lot for hydrogeologists. Thank you for joining us, all of you. If you have missed them, please access our ABAS YouTube channel and get them. You will enjoy, I'm pretty sure. We remind you that we will offer 2 sessions per month until August 2021, when we will host the presential part of our event. So long, COVID, we hope, by then. One session would be more focused on market and the other on the scientific aspects of groundwater. So 2 per month, don't forget, and join us. Please follow ABAS or IAH or ALSUD on your social media to stay informed. We have more than 900 participants on our 10 thematic WhatsApp groups, and our app has been downloaded by more than 400 participants. Also, on February 1st, we launched the online edition of FENAGUA, the National Water Trade Show, the Brazilian National Water Trade Show that this year is international. And we have more than 20 exhibitors. You can access it by visiting the event website, IAH2021Brazil.org. IAH2021Brazil.org. These always growing numbers are a proof of the successful digital strategy to create the largest groundwater community in the world. We would like to thank our sponsors, supporters, and expositors who allowed this great event to take place in Brazil. Well, sort of in Brazil, because each of you guys speaking today are in a different country. Thank you for participating. So our main sponsors are ANA, Agência Nacional de Águas e Saneamento Básico, and Vale. We have the support from CBH-RSF, Comitê da Bacia Hidrográfica do Rio São Francisco, Agência Peixe Vivo. Our exhibitors, Altri, Bodega do Poço, Chicago Numeric, Ebara, LG, Maxi Água, The Groundwater Project, CRI Water Pumps, Lepono, Aragon Sondagens, Clean Environment, Franklin Electric, Pase Hidrometria, Perfuratrizes DTH, AGB Peixe Vivo, ALS, BRAIN, Eurofins, G-Hidro Monitoramento, I'll read it in Portuguese, GLP Laboratórios, Hexis, In Situ do Brasil, PRD Rigs, Trionic, Vapor Solution, Water Services and Technologies. We will have 3 short presentations today, followed by a roundtable where the viewers can participate by sending questions to the speakers. Please get ready. You may send your questions at any time during the presentations. You don't have to wait for the end to type your questions. Participate at any moment. It's going to be open on YouTube for you to participate, okay? The question may be sent by our app. Please download it our preferred app store. Just search for IAH 2021. Repeating, IAH 2021. Or directly on your YouTube chat, okay? This session has simultaneous translations into Portuguese and then also on YouTube, okay? Please make sure you direct your questions to one of our guests. Or if you're in doubt and you want to ask your questions to all of them together, is also possible. This session will be hosted by Viviana Re and myself. I think we say Viviana Re. She's Italian. Assistant professor of University of Pisa, Italy, and IIH Socio-Hydrogeology Network Chair. Okay, Viviana, it's all yours. Take over now. Welcome all of you guys.
Thank you, Everton, and welcome everyone to this webinar that is jointly organized by the UNESCO World Water Assessment Program and the IIH Socio-Hydrogeology Network. I am Viviana. As Everton said, I'm the chair of the Socio-Hydrogeology Network, together with Theresa Frommen from Germany, which is also one of the speakers for today's session, and Shrikant Limaye from India. Before starting, I would like to spend just a couple of words about our network, which is one of the youngest that has been added to the family of network and commission of the International Association to foster the inclusion of social perspective into hydrogeological and hydrogeochemical assessments, and thus to promote inter and transdisciplinary cooperation and research targeted to groundwater protection and management. Among the different topics that our network is interested in, gender diversity and inclusion, some gender issues in the groundwater realm, as we think that this topic is very important, but only seldom it is adequately addressed. So as a result, and with specific reference to the distinct role of women and men and their interaction in the groundwater sector, or when groundwater is at stake, there are still significant imbalances, and these are related not only to the working sector, so when water is related to water jobs, but also in possible differences that may exist when water management and access to decision-making process is at stake. So we really believe that this topic is important, and we need to discuss and foster and promote the discussion on this topic. So for this reason, we recently launched a survey, as you can see in this slide, that will allow us to assess the status of the connection between gender issues and groundwater in the groundwater sector. The survey is still on, so it will be, you can fill it if you haven't done it yet until the end of the month, and it just takes a few minutes, but we will really appreciate that if you could fill the survey, as it will really help us to get more insight on this important topic. And the result hopefully will be shared and discussed in the later this year at the international IIH congresses. So in the meantime, we still wanted to foster the discussion and start the debate. And this is why we are here today. Thank you to the organizing committee of the Brazilian Congress to discuss some specific aspects related to gender and groundwater issues. Some of the topics that we're going to discuss today are related to the importance of the collection of gender disaggregated data, the assessment of the role of women when groundwater management and monitoring is at stake, and also some insights on the possible, we will see with Anna later in this afternoon, on the gender inequality in the water sector. So I'm really thankful to the speakers that accepted our invitation to join the session. So we will have Laurence Thuy from the UNESCO World Water Assessment Program, Theresa Frommen from Humboldt-Universität zu Berlin, Germany, and also the co-chair of the Socio-Hydrogeology Network, and Anna Maciel de Carvalho, assistant professor of the Federal University of Jequitinhonha and Mucuri Valley in Brazil. So here are the topic that we are going to discuss today, and I will close this for now and leave the floor to the first speaker for this webinar today, which is Mr. Laurence Thuy, which is the Gender Communication Officer at the UNESCO World Water Assessment Program since 2014. He holds a master's degree in Earth, Surface and Water, and his main expertise is in hydrology and sustainability related to integrated matters such as water resource management, environmental engineering, and sustainable development. Over the period 2014-2019, he has co-authored several publications in the field of gender and water management, including the 2019 UNESCO World Water Assessment Program Toolkit on Sex-disaggregated water data, and contributed to the World Water Development Reports from 2015 up to 2020. Aside of carrying out the gender mainstreaming of UNESCO WAP publication, he is also one of the trainers within the WAP Capacity Development Program on sex-disaggregated water data and indicator. And today, Lawrence will speak about a very important topic, as I mentioned, related to gender disaggregated data. And his talk will be Towards Gender Responsive Groundwater Management, the Role of Sex-disaggregated Data. Lawrence, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Viviana. I hope you can all see. My screen in a correct way. So, as Viviana said, my name is Lawrence Thuy, and I'm the Gender and Communication Officer at the UNESCO World Water Assessment Program. And this presentation will be on how we go towards gender-responsive groundwater management and the role of sex-disaggregated data. First, a very brief outline of my presentation. So I will start with a short introduction on the topic of water and gender and what is exactly its relevance. Then we're going to dive into the topic of data and explore the role of sex-disaggregated data for gender equality. And in line with this, I will present to you the UNESCO WAP Toolkit on sex-disaggregated water data, as well as some key results and findings from field research we have done within the Governance of Groundwater Resources in Transboundary Aquifers project, or in short, GGRETA. And of course, I will add with some takeaway conclusions. So first of all, why is water and gender relevant to consider? Well, in the water domain, large inequalities exist on all levels, from the very highest levels, such as the transboundary or national water governance level, up to the regional, community, and even intra-household level. So, for instance, political and economic leadership is often unequally shared between men and women, and is characterized by an obvious lack of women's involvement in water governance and decision-making. This in turn leads to policies being gender blind or gender neutral, which causes important disparities in terms of economic and social development. For example, think of women and men's unequal access to land property and the linked water access, or unequal access to credits, to new technologies, or even to vocational training. And all of this allows the persistence of unequal social norms and the associated gender stereotypes, which makes that women are disproportionately affected by a lack of water access. And indeed, in 80% of households, women and girls are primarily responsible for water collection, which means that they often do not have enough time left to invest in education or income generating activities. And at the same time, these activities can impact their health. So clearly, this is a vicious cycle that needs to be broken urgently. And it's exactly for this that water assessment can only be meaningful with a gender perspective, because it's indispensable to identify women and men's different roles and their needs with respect to water resources. Only like this, we can make the management and governance of the world's groundwater resources more inclusive and sustainable. So Now, in order to identify and understand these different roles and needs that women and men have in the field of groundwater, and also to keep track of the progress we are making, and finally to inform evidence-based policies, data is really crucial. In order for this data to be meaningful, it of course needs to be disaggregated in terms of sex, and if possible also in terms of other factors such as age or income and so on. However, sadly, there exists a great lack of this disaggregated water data, as we know that only 37% of countries regularly produce such sex disaggregated data on several topics. And unsurprisingly, because of this, there has been a widely supported call to increase the availability of this sex disaggregated water data. Even in the UN Agenda 2030 on Sustainable Development that was launched in 2015, the target 17.8 calls for enhancing the collection of disaggregated data. And we all probably know that this 2030 agenda also contains a dedicated goal to water access, which is number 6, and a dedicated goal to gender equality, number 5. These two topics, we can consider them to be cross-cutting across all the different SDGs. So progress in both water access and gender equality is key for achieving not only the individual goals, but actually the entire 2030 agenda. So on that behalf, and in line with the UNESCO global priority on gender equality, we as UNESCO WAP have engaged ourselves since 2014 to help close this existing gap of gender and water data, as well as to promote the overall awareness and knowledge on gender issues in the water domain in order to advance gender equality. So our relevant activities are, in a nutshell, the development of methodologies, indicators, and tools for data collection, capacity development for diverse stakeholders, and involvement in several projects. In 2015, the first edition of the UNESCO WAP Toolkit on Sex Disaggregated Water Data was released, and this formed the first ever initiative that aimed to achieve a global standard for gender-responsive water assessment, monitoring, and reporting. And as we will see later on, this methodology was applied in the field from 2016 onwards. Yes. So let's take a closer look at these toolkits. The 2015 edition of the WAP Toolkit on sex disaggregated data consists out of 4 different tools, as you can see, which are the indicators, the questionnaires, and also the guidelines, and consist out of 5 topics. So there were 5 main topics and 40 sub-indicators. But as you can see, recently, in response to the outcomes of field testing, we have decided to, together with the outcomes of the field testing, we have decided to launch the 2019 toolkit, which you can see in this slide. It also consists out of 4 tools. The first tool are the indicators that consists out of 105 gender responsive indicators on 10 different priority topics for the water assessment, monitoring, and reporting. The second is the methodology, which contains the conceptual pillars of the methodology for the collection of this sex disaggregated data. And then finally, there's also the guidelines that contains a summary, let's say, of data collection methods, which is appropriate to the needs of different users of this toolkit. And it also makes that it is it's suited for being applied in different regions all over the world. The last tool is a questionnaire that contains up to 400 questions to be applied in either household surveys or key informant surveys for the collection of this sex-disaggregated data. So here you can see an overview. This table shows what is the interlinkage basically between the 2019 toolkit and its gender responsive indicators and the Agenda 2030. As I said before, the toolkit has been created to respond to this new 2030 agenda, and therefore it contains intrinsic interlinkages between the WAP priority topics for the gender responsive indicators and the different SDGs, which of course, number 5 on gender equality and number 6 on the access to clean water are key to all of our indicators. And another example of the relevance of these indicators and the interlinkage with the 2030 agenda is, for example, the SDG number 3, which is on health and well-being. And I think this is an example that speaks for itself in these times with the COVID-19 pandemic that our global community is facing. Next slide. Yes. So here you see a short overview of the international recognitions that the toolkit has received, and also the occasions in which it has been adopted. As you can see, the most recent recognition has been by the IHP Intergovernmental Council and the member states in 2018. But aside of this, it has also been applied within several projects, such as the International Waters Learning Exchange and Resources Network project from 2015 onwards in a continuous way. So let us talk about a specific example of the application of the WAP indicators in the field. So we know that in the last decades, groundwater has been the source of major socioeconomic development, but unfortunately, this has gone outside of coherent governance frameworks, which has led to the fact that women have been largely excluded from consideration in these frameworks. So we have engaged in a research in the field, and the objective of the research was to analyze groundwater governance frameworks by taking a critical look on the gender aspects within these frameworks on different levels, being transboundary, national, and also regional level. Secondly, also to assess gender equality issues and to analyze the role of women in the use, the management, and within the larger decision-making related to groundwater. And lastly, of course, another aim of the research is to encourage policymakers to integrate these very important gender perspectives in policy frameworks. So now in more detail on this research. So this was applied within the GRETA project, which is full out. It is the Groundwater Governance and Transboundary Aquifers project, or GRETA, which is founded by the Swiss Development Corporation and is led by UNESCO Intergovernmental Hydrological Program. In 2019, within this GRETA project, we carried out surveys in the field in the region of the Stampriot Transboundary Aquifer, or shortly STAS, which is shared by Botswana and Namibia and also South Africa. And then in line in 2019, the research was carried out in another region, in the Osso-Tepeque y Citala transboundary aquifer, or shortly ATOC, which is shared by the countries of El Salvador and Honduras. So how exactly did we do this? We applied the WAP indicators in both intra-household surveys, interviews, and also within key informant interviews. Different indicators of our WAP indicators have been applied, as you can see here, in the two different regions. And additionally, the whole research was backed up by additional desk research. So let us start by discussing this national perspectives from the STAS aquifer. In Botswana, we found that indeed some water laws seem to be outdated, as they have not been adjusted since the time of independence, so 1950s, 1960s. We basically found that there exists a legal pluralism in the legal framework, since certain in terms of law, yes, there exists indeed the difference that according to law, apologies. So there exists the difference, excuse me. Okay, so there is a legal pluralism, and also channels for community participation seem to lag severely behind. They are not facilitated in the frameworks, in the legal frameworks. Then in Namibia, we have a similar situation. There is a lack of institutional gender mainstreaming, and again, the same legal pluralism. Marriages done by law do include a joint separation of possessions, but then customary marriages do not have this, unfortunately. So let's carry on. Here you can see the location where these surveys took place. So the household, intra-household surveys, the region where they took place. And as said, we utilized the 2019 toolkit. So here are some of the key outcomes. On the left side, you can see the results of the question in which we asked the household members who is involved in water-related decision-making. And as you can see here, the main outcome by male respondents is that it is indeed a male responsibility. However, females responded that it's either a shared or a female responsibility. On the right-hand side, you can see the results, the responses of people asking who is the primary household decision maker. And there seems to be a consensus that indeed the male is the primary household decision maker. On the other hand, different results that are not displayed within this slide show that the main responsible for household water quality and quantity is the female. And for water productive uses, such as on farms, this seems to be mostly man. In Namibia, we have slightly different results. We asked respondents who is responsible for farm water management. And on the left-hand side, you can see these outcomes. And we see, to a large extent, agreement between the responses of both male and female, which both indicate that this indeed is mainly male's responsibility. On the right-hand side, you see the responses to the question if discussion between males and females on decisions regarding water took place, yes or no. There is some disagreement between male and female, which is extremely interesting. To a larger extent, male respondents said that indeed there is discussion, and female respondents denied this. This makes us believe that indeed there is not a fair contribution of female in household water management. Even though females show more interest in new technologies, they have less access to training compared to males. And again, as was the case in Botswana, we saw that mainly males are the main responsible for decision-making on commercial farms. So with this, I'm coming to the conclusions of this presentation. We saw that to a very large extent, gender inequality exists on the different levels, from the household up to the transboundary level. There is, up to date, a great lack of sex-disaggregated data and of gender-responsive policies. This is in contradiction with women's pivotal role in water resources management. And from the WAP research that I have presented, from the methodological point of view, we can say that the indicators passed the test because they managed to indicate agreements and contradictions between policy frameworks and results, or what we see on the ground. The field data, on the other hand, showed that women are mainly the ones burdened with domestic water management, whereas men seem to be the primary decision makers. Overall, we can say that this points to a shortcoming in the water policy's goal of women empowerment in the countries of Botswana and Namibia that we studied. What concerns the desk research, we can conclude that there is a weak legal basis for strengthening women's participation in the field, for strengthening their participation in community organizations, despite that there have been made significant advances in the field in the whole South African region. And at the same time, we have a few recommendations to share with you. So it is clear that the availability of sex-disaggregated data is key to inform progress in the field and to inform gender-responsive policies, which can in turn promote gender equality in water in water-based governance. And at the same time, there's an urgent need to incorporate to a further extent gender mainstreaming in national legislation. And last but not least, it is absolutely crucial that all stakeholders have access to capacity building and capacity strengthening programs. So with this, I would like to thank you for your attention. I hope you appreciated the presentation. You can look for more information by scanning the QR code here displayed in the slide, or to visit the short link there, or you can contact me with your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lawrence, for this very interesting presentation. And it's really appreciated indeed. Let me just remind that we will have time for question and discussion afterwards. But if from the audience there are some questions, please use type them in the chat, and we will make sure that you will be able to address your question to the speakers at the end of all the presentations. So thank you once again, Lawrence, and I would like now to give the floor to Dr. Theresa Frommen. Theresa is a postdoctoral researcher at Humboldt-Universität zu Berlin. She studied geological science with a focus on hydrogeology at Freie Universität Berlin, RWTH and University of Manchester. After her master, she was a research associate and doctoral student at the hydrogeology group at Freie Universität Berlin, doing research about participatory methods in hydrogeology with a focus in India. During her doctoral project, she lived and worked in Jaipur, Rajasthan for 1.5 years. Her main research interests are interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary cooperation and approaches, science communication and education, as well as understanding the connection between groundwater and society and why some conflict can arise. So today, Theresa will give us a talk on a very important topic entitled Women as Changemakers, Experience from a Project on Participatory Groundwater Management in India. Please, Theresa, the floor is yours.
Hello to everyone, and it's great to be here today. Welcome from Berlin, and I'm really happy to speak to such a big audience. And I don't speak Portuguese, but I tried to translate at least my titles for you. I hope I haven't done any mistakes. I will talk about my project in India, as Viviana already told you. And during the time we were implementing a participatory groundwater management in Jaipur in Rajasthan. And this project was funded by the Global Resilience Partnership, and the overall topic of the project were women's action towards climate resilience for urban poor in South Asia. And the project lead was by an Indian organization called Mahila Housing Seva Trust. And this organization is already working for more than 25 years with urban poor communities on different topics, from livelihood or housing, hygiene, and also water. And for this project now, they wanted to focus also more on groundwater, and that's where we were coming in from a hydrogeological perspective. And during that time, I was working at Freie Universität Berlin in Germany. And our task now was to combine everything, like to work closely together with the local organization, but also with the communities. And that's why we developed a participatory groundwater management approach. And I want to shortly show you how we build up that project, because there are many people working in participatory management, and we have divided it into 3 big steps. So our first step was raising and knowledge exchange. We were doing this during water workshops in different Indian cities with a lot of community groups. And then the second step was where I was working in Jaipur on 2 case studies, and where I was working very closely for nearly 2 years together with local women assistants. And this was really to build up their capacity to monitor the water and to understand the water situation in their area. And then our third step was to think about how we can upscale our project, because it was only happening in this small case study in Jaipur. And it's important to think about how you can transfer the results of this project to other areas. And we also were thinking about how to reach a diverse audience. And the characteristic of all these 3 points or all these 3 steps is that they are requiring a lot of time, and you will see results more in the short or middle to long term. And you have to engage with the participants on a continuous basis. And I think many of you who have worked in participatory projects have done similar experiences. And before I want to tell you what we have done with, why it was special to work with women in these different parts, I want to first ask the question why I was focusing on women. I haven't really questioned that at the beginning of the project, but in the last years, during many talks, I was always asked by the audience, why women? And there's one very obvious and formal reason, because this organization we were working with is a women organization. So Mahila is the Hindi word for women, and this organization is focusing on women community groups in many Indian cities. And those of you who are familiar with India, you have maybe also recognized that this Seva, it's the biggest Indian women association. So Mahila Housing Trust is one organization within this Seva umbrella. And then there's the second reason, there was a second reason for us at the beginning, which you can see here. So these are all pictures from my fieldwork, and you can see what also Lawrence have mentioned before. It's the task of the women to take responsibility of the household water supply. Though they are fetching the water from the water tanker, they carry it home, they queue up at the borewell, and they all do these things in India. And coming back now to our approach and to the first steps of the water workshops, I want to share 3 observations with you, which I think was really interesting for me to understand how women, or why it's important to include women and how women interact with these things. So the first one was, you can see here a picture from one of the workshops where they were working on the hydrological cycle. And it was really nice to see that these women, who many of them have never went to school or only for a few years, so they enjoyed it so much to learn something, to have the possibility in this safe space to learn something, and to learn something new, just to have the chance to learn something what is also really important for their daily life. And the second observation I was doing is that in this safe space, because we were like women groups, they were discussing freely with each other. They were not shy. They were telling their opinion about the groundwater, or how they imagine groundwater, what are the water problems. And this was really interesting to observe how they discussed with each other about these topics. And then the third observation was regarding all these technical and chemical equipment. So we were doing a lot of water testing with the women groups. So how to test the water and which parameter to test. And here it was really nice to see that at the beginning, when they were seeing these scientific instruments, they were thinking, okay, that's nothing what we can do, or it's something I don't know, I have never learned that. And then during the course, during the workshop, they realized, or they learned, okay, I can also handle these scientific, technical instruments. I can do these chemical tests, and it was really nice to see then how they enjoyed it. And I think this was also an important experience that you see, I can do this. So to learn, okay, I can do this. Science is not so far away from me, or these technical instruments. And then there's coming to the second step, which was taking the most time and the most part of the whole project, where the work with the local women assistant. And there we were working in 2 case studies in Jaipur. And we started with the mapping, what you can see here. So we mapped all water resources in the area and the community. And here it was really interesting to see that these women already knew so much about the local water resource. So it was really good to work with them, because they already had this huge knowledge about where's which. Here you can see a water line connection. And this was also really helpful for the second step, where we decided on a monitoring plan. So which wells, which hand pumps, which water line connections to include in a regular monitoring, because they already knew, okay, which hand pump is running dry in the summer, which water line connections are used a lot. So this helped a lot to develop a meaningful monitoring plan. And then the third step was then actually monitoring itself. So the women were for 1.5 years regularly testing certain valves and water points. Here it was amazing to see that, of course, it took time at the beginning, but then they were able to do the testing without me. So they went to the field and done the testing and write down the results. And I think the last step was maybe the hardest one, or it's challenging, because then you have the results and you have to understand, okay, what does these results mean? So what does it tell me if the nitrate level is like that? And what is then can I do? How can I use, which water can I use for what purpose? And how can I protect the local groundwater resource? And here it was interesting again to see how these women had a lot of practical and creative ideas. For example, how to protect a hand pump. So we discussed this a lot. And the third part of our project was this evaluation and upscaling. And here I only want to focus on one of the things we have done, and that's 2 films. So I have worked together with a filmmaker, and one outcome is the documentary about that project, and it's called Pani Check. So Pani means water. And you can see in the subtitle, it's the sisterhood of water. And this is also coming from one of our local assistants who was saying in the film in the end, it's important that all sisters are working together. And I think this is a really nice idea or approach. And we really wanted to have these films because we wanted that this project can be transferred to other places, and the women we have worked with and also the women we wanted to reach with this project, they will never read a scientific publication or a project report, but they will watch a movie. So that's the idea, to produce a film. And next to this documentary, we have produced a shorter film, which I called a motivational musical. And this we have created in a more or less very participatory way together with the women, because the question for us was, how can we transfer the results, and who is able to tell other women and to motivate other women to take part in water project? And that's, of course, the women who have already done this project. They can, in the best way, tell other women in a similar situation, what is this project about? So this second movie is really targeted at an Indian audience. So we have a lot of music in it, a lot of dance, and the women created the storyline together with us. And this was a nice experience. And then we wanted to, in the next step, we wanted to know, okay, is this working? So can we reach other women with these films and with this project on participatory groundwater management? So what we have done then last year, shortly before Corona took over the world, we were on a film and workshop tour through India. So that means we were showing the films, and together with the films, we were doing water workshops. And we started in Ahmedabad because there's the head office of our partner organization. And here we already could see that our idea of motivating other women is working, because we have shown this in a community, and we have seen that the women were able to identify with the women on the screen because they are in such a similar situation. So you have the women in the film who are also like coming from poor communities and taking part in that project. And this really motivated the women in Ahmedabad also to take part in such a project. And then our second station was Jaipur. Of course, there was the project, so we were coming back to Jaipur. And here it was really interesting to see how important it is to come back to a place after the project ended and to bring back the results. So we have shown the movies there in big events in the communities, hand over DVDs, hand over film poster, like really made an event out of it. And this really helped these women in the community, because now although the community were able to understand, okay, what have these women done? What have these women learned? What capacity do they now have? And so from Jaipur, and the next step was we were going to Delhi, and in Delhi, so we were doing also these water testing workshops, and the next station was Bhopal, and then all these like Jaipur, Delhi, and Bhopal, we were able to take our local assistants, who are also, of course, the protagonists of the film, to take them with us. And I think this was the best point of this film tour, because in this way, the presentation of the film and also the water workshops were done by the local assistants. So we stepped back, and the women, our local assistant directly interact with the women in the other cities and communities. And this was really nice to see how these women now function as role models, because you need, it really had to imagine, okay, this woman has done this project and she was able to do it, and now she's traveling from Jaipur to Delhi to Bhopal to present the film, and she's kind of a movie star. And so this helped a lot for identification for the other women. And they all not only discussed this with communities, but our local assistants then also discussed that with the staff in the other branch offices, and told them about this project and how you can use the films. And after Bhopal, our local assistant had to go back to Jaipur, but we traveled further to Ranchi. There's also a branch office of our partner organization. And that's just an example. So because I have done in all the cities, I've conducted interviews with the local women to understand what they think about the participatory groundwater project, what they think about the films, and if they would also be motivated to take part in such a project. And then in the end, we were also, because we also wanted to reach a wider audience, we were also showing the movie at the Goethe Institute in Chennai and in the Goethe Institute in Delhi to get feedback from this side. So all in all, this film and workshop tour in the end has shown us that these women can act as a change maker if you give them the possibilities to speak out, to take part. But of course, there are also challenges if you work with women. And I want to just tell you two, which I experienced. The first one was really much at the beginning. I was doing a photo voice study. That's a tool from social science, where you give single-use cameras to women to take pictures. And I ask them to take pictures of the water situation in their area, because I wanted to understand what they think about the water situation. Most of these photos, pictures were nice, but there were also pictures like that. And that's nothing about water, but that's not the problem. The problem is that this picture was definitely not taken by a woman, but by a man. So what you should be maybe aware of if you want to work participatory with women, that you ask yourself, why is this woman participating? Maybe her family forces her because they are expecting any money from it, or maybe the NGO is forcing participation, or whatever other reasons are there. And this can lead to something that in the end, not the woman is participating, but maybe her husband or her son. And the second challenge was happening during the project. Because and I will. These are now screenshots from the movie. So this is a screenshot where we asked a young woman to be a local assistant to work with us, and she agreed, and she was really smart and very interested. And then she was not able to work with us anymore, and I will explain you now why. So that's from an interview half a year later, where she's explaining why she was not able to participate anymore. So she's explaining the program was going well, the work was nice with the water project. But then Theresa, was told by one of the other husbands that I should not work with her anymore. And that's why she's a wrong girl, or she's not a good girl. And the problem here is that this young woman has left her husband and is living with her family again. And since then, she's an outsider within this community. And this then led to this, that she's reflecting, okay, if I'm working, people have problems and my family is facing problems. So if I'm not working, nobody has a problem. And then, so in the end, what she's saying is, it's better if I sit at home than if I go to work. And I think this is something we as natural scientists maybe not consider in our work, what kind of impact we can have in a society, and that it's not only about gender relation, but that gender itself is very relational. So it's about the power relations within a society or in a community. And we are normally, as natural scientists or hydrogeologists, are not aware of that. And with that, I want to come to my last slide and to my conclusion, because we have seen it's definitely important to work with women, and also Lawrence has told about that in his talk. And but there's the question is how to do it. And I have some points. So the first one is on participation in general. It's not only with women, but in general. If you include them, if you include women in a real decision-making level, or are you only including them to get their knowledge and like on an informing and consultation level? And there's a nice publication, which is already quite old, from Arnstein from 1969, with this letter of participation. And I think that's really helpful at the beginning to consider if it's real participation and if it's real decision-making for the women or not. And then the second one is that participation should not be an extra burden for the women, because the women I've worked with, they have their daily schedule is so full, they have to do so many things. So it's important, for example, to pay them or to provide childcare, and to think about how really you can include the women in your project. And if you, for example, you should also consider if you pay them, and if this is shifting the gendered roles within a family. For example, normally the male member is the one who generates income. If this is now shifting to the women, this can have impacts on the family again, or on the community. And this, you should reflect on that before you start such a project. And one idea is to also include in a careful way the male members of a family. And then coming back to what I was saying really much at the beginning, what are the reasons to include women, is that you should reflect on if you're not reproducing gendered roles with your approach. Because I have also worked with women because they have a lot of knowledge. And if I just take their knowledge and not include them on a real, where they have also power, on decision-making power, it will only reproduce their role again. And I think for this it's really helpful to have a regular training on the discourses about women's participation and empowerment. And last, which is also again not only on women but also in general, I think we as hydrogeologists have to understand much better that water is not only natural, it's also social. The distribution of water is a distribution of power, and these hydrosocial relations are always power relations too. And with this, I want to just show you my literature. These are great women, people who have thought about this much more than myself, and there's of course much more literature on it. And with this, I want to thank you, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Theresa, for the very interesting presentation and for sharing the results and the outcomes of your very, very interesting work. So I encourage everyone who has questions to use the chat in YouTube to ask questions for our speaker. And I would like now to invite our last speaker for today, which is Ana Maciel de Carvalho, which is an assistant professor at the Federal University of, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce it properly, but I will try, Jequitinhonha. Everton, maybe you can help me with the pronunciation, or Anna, she will say, I'm really sorry, in Brazil.
Federal University of Jequitinhonha and Mucuri valleys.
I'm sorry, I tried before many times, and now I'm probably getting too into the talks. I'm really sorry. So, well, she's also a doctoral candidate at the Federal University of Ouro Preto, I think this is correct, in Brazil. She studied geology and she did her master in hydrogeology at the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. And she was a researcher at the Institute of Technology Research, again in Sao Paulo, for almost 10 years. During her master, she lived at Canada as a visiting scholar at the University of Waterloo. And she has been a reviewer in some journals, and she's also an associate researcher at the Groundwater Research Center. And she's also a member director of the Brazilian Society of Geology. And today she will give a talk, which I think is going to be very inspiring for many reasons. And the title is there gender inequality in the groundwater sector? A Brazilian scenario and initiative carried out on this subject. Thank you, Anna. The floor is yours.
Yes. Bom dia a todos e a todas. Eu gostaria de agradecer o convite, né, para poder falar aqui sobre um assunto ainda pouco discutido. E até
this
mesmo
topic that is seldom discussed and seldom known, which is gender inequality in groundwaters. It is the first time that this is mentioned in 47 years of events in this international congress. So let's discuss this topic. I'm very happy to be here together with my colleagues Lawrence, Viviana, and Theresa, helping to open doors. I believe that this is only the beginning. We have a lot to talk about this, understand, to decrease these inequalities, and this takes time. So we begin with dialogues. Dialogues are very necessary. This is the best tool to fight inequalities and to show how diversity is important. The proposal is more than answering this. We want people to think, as we saw in Lawrence and Theresa's participations. It's important to have dialogue and to make people think. Is there inequality in gender in underground waters? So why do we have to talk about this topic? What has been done? I would like to begin the presentation with some points that show the historical inequality in gender, and which is also a social inequality. So I will begin with a poem. So enough of what is done with women's body. So water that you use also to end your thirst. Maria Teresa Horta is a Portuguese writer, and she dedicated herself to the feminist movement, and she used poems as a form of resistance. In this poem, she brings many points. For example, women's body as a prison, or her house as a prison. So these show political situation of women, and the other points, the water and the cup, are symbols that have to do with sexuality. For example, the cup is the woman's breast and the uterus that generates life. The water in the poem, which is today's topic, is the greatest symbol of femininity. That is why it is in capital letters. As a source of life and purification, this is the origin of life. Water, and also the opposite, death. So the intention of this poem is to show the problems that we have through these symbols. Historically, this has worked to oppress women. And she says that the feminist discourse is important when you have a society that needs to understand this, especially women, and especially those who are more affected as poor women and Black women. And we see this in history. We see Lauren's presentation. Women are a minority in terms of management, in management positions. So we have to rewrite our history so the new image of women may be different. So she wrote this in the 80s, in 1980, and it's still valid today. We still see this situation today. Later on, you will understand this better. So the revolution begins when the outcry begins, as Theresa showed in her work in India. I believe this project in India should be an example, and we have many other places, and these projects should be also carried out in other places. So the feminist movement, hydrogeology, talking about gender and water, to have a Brazilian Association of Women in Geosciences in Brazil for our profession is very important to begin to stimulate this dialogue. Now, about Carolina Maria de Jesus, also a writer, but she is Black, she is poor. So the work is, their work normally is not valued. So imagine a woman who is a writer who lives in a shanty town and is Black and poor. So I took some points from her book, which is The Back Room. So I will read here. I got up at 5 a.m. to go to bring water. Today is Sunday. People go later to bring water. I went to the river to wash clothes, and I saw Mariana, a decent woman. She has 9 children and a model home. I woke up at 7 a.m. hearing my children. I left my bed and I went to bring water. Women were already there in line. Well, Carolina Maria de Jesus is from Minas Gerais, and she is one of the greatest writers in Brazil. And she is a woman, she is Black, and she lives in a shanty town. She is always concerned with the food for the day, for herself and her children. And also the search for water. She makes clear in her writing, her book, the search for water every morning, and also the brutal environment, the brutal situation in the city, the shanty town, and the people, the brutality. So, social inequalities. And in these stretches, we see how water is present in terms of gender and also social issues. Water is always involved. I will talk about some realities. Although it is a right guaranteed by law, we have a different reality, a cruel reality. 35 million people don't have access to drinking water. This is data from 2017, and it's no different today. 35 million people in Brazil don't have access to drinking water. 90% of the lack of infrastructure in sanitation is in shanty town, is located in shanty towns and other irregular housing areas. The access to water has social issues involved. The main point is the inequality. So also, in the end, women have more work to do taking care of people and also household chores. In Maria de Carolina de Jesus, she denounces the authorities and lack of access to tap water, quality tap water, and also structural racism and segregation in the cities, and also impoverishment of the Black. And also, for example, if there are more poor Black women, so lack of water will affect them even more. So Black women have less access to water. What happens? They stop going to school because the bathrooms in the schools are not adequate. How about underground water? Most of the water, drinking water available, comes from underground waters, but we have a lot of sewers that are injected into the aquifers, contaminating and restricting the availability of groundwater. And these women who need to go further and further away to find quality water and become vulnerable to the illnesses. 111,000 deaths are attributed to illnesses related to contamination and also sewers. So knowing these numbers, even in 2020, this is the reality in Brazil and also many other countries.
Você pode compartilhar sua tela, é que a gente não está vendo sua apresentação.
Opa.
Desculpa interromper, obrigado.
Please, Anna, please share your slides with us.
Não vai dar tempo. Obrigado.
Sorry, the presentation wasn't shared. Vou passar rápido, né? Maria Teresa Horta e Carolina Maria de Jesus. Estou falando dos dados.
So I'm talking about the data.
Finalizando aqui.
I was...
Não ainda, não está compartilhado. So, Anna's screen wasn't shared, so sorry for interrupting, guys.
Vou tentar de novo. E agora?
Now it's coming. Tá vindo.
Tá certo?
Okay.
Põe no modo apresentação. Thank you.
Bom, desculpa todo mundo, tivemos...
Well, I'm very sorry we had a technical problem. The presentation wasn't being shared. So I'd like to continue. I was talking about some data. So to think of gender in water, this is fundamental for development, to include gender in water. Some numbers about what we said. According to UNICEF, women and girls from around the world spend 200 million hours per day collecting water. In the Brazilian semi-arid region, 2 hours a day are necessary to collect water. So women have to go after water for their basic needs. So women are the managers of water. Now, looking at women who work with underground waters, I analyzed the organizations, ANA and the Brazilian Association of Underground Water. And we noticed that there's an inequality in ANA, the national agency. 38% of the employees are women, a minority. When we look at the directors, only 3 are women. At ABAS, the board of director is 100% composed of men, 6 men on the board, and only one woman. So there are 2 realities that we have to understand about gender and underground water. One of them is access, limited access, and the other, groundwater sector, women working in the groundwater sector. Well, what is being done on this topic? Some actions were promoted to discuss, to have a dialogue and increase knowledge. So this topic was included in the Congress. This is the topic that we're discussing. A survey, we made a survey about data, women in hydrology, and we developed an international survey. It is available, as Viviana showed. So please participate in our survey. And also we're designing the project of UNESCO. Soon we want to continue this survey. Some women got together. So we got together for this event today. So we have our Congress. So we saw Theresa Frommen, Isabella Di Castillo from Unicamp, Paola Piccioni, the UN, and Michela Mileto, University of Torino. So this is the initiative. This is our initiative. So we have another group of researchers and students interested in doing the survey and evaluating the reality in Brazil concerning underground waters. So Isabella, Marcela, Isabella Panes, and Gabriela Alves. So we did research on women's participation, articles, and participation in the congresses since the beginning, and we developed an online questionnaire with 11 questions on courses, university, information, and jobs, where they work, their position, and monthly salary. So we sent this questionnaire through social media, and we had support from ABAS. These results I will show briefly here. Well, this is another initiative that Viviana and Theresa are participating. They mentioned we have the Brazilian questionnaire. We improved. We developed a questionnaire also for use around the world. This questionnaire is available in 7 languages in Socio-Hydrogeology IAH website. So if you're interested, please help us with the survey. You can see here in topics, in this link, topics, groundwater and gender. Well, we brought more women like Marcela, Jessica, and Barbara for a more detailed survey looking at Brazil, including professional, social, and cultural issues. Well, if you're interested in participating, please talk to us. And here I'll show the results of the Brazilian survey. First, women's participation in terms of papers and as speakers in congresses from 1980 to 2019. In all the graphs from now on, you will see the women in red and the men in blue. This shows authors, and we see that during the years, we see a more prevalent participation of men in terms of papers sent to the Congress. Concerning first authors, who are the first authors sent to the Congresses? There are many more authors that are men. In 2000, 2001, look at the difference. First authors that are men. So we can notice that this number is almost the same in 2019. In relation to the speakers, the difference is enormous in terms of men and women. In 2018, there were 41 speakers men and only 7 women speakers. Now, the results about the survey concerning jobs, study and employment, geologists, engineers, environmental managers. Well, almost 200 participants responded, most of them men. Most of the management positions are occupied by men. And this is similar to Lawrence's survey. Theresa also talked about this. It's no different in Brazil. The management positions are mostly occupied by men. In relation to jobs, salaries, wages, the lowest salaries, 1 to 3 minimum wages, 3 to 6 minimum wages in Brazil, upwards of 15 minimum wages. The highest wages we find in blue, men. Lowest wages to women. And also PhDs. Most of the ones that have PhDs are women. 27% that have doctorates are women. But last of all, those that have a doctorate, we see a great difference in wages between men and women. So more than 9 minimum wages in Brazil, most of them are men. So final considerations, women represent 51.5% of the Brazilian population. However, the female participation in the job market and in academy is lower than those of males. Women are paid less than men. Inequality in gender exists and is present in the public and private sectors. Access to quality water means access to public health. Final considerations. Capitalist society refuses equality. We have to claim and reinvent. We have to be political, yes, and we have to fight and support those who defend gender equality and the environment. Access to water and sanitation matters for all aspects of human dignity, from food safety to energy safety and environmental health. The female fight, even for the most basic, is necessary to reduce inequalities. Thank you. I hope this will be food for thought. And I'd like to finish with a phrase that I like. Women are like water. They grow when they get together, when they meet.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for this very inspiring talk also. I think what you said is really important, and I think giving numbers and showing data is really the starting point to start the debate and try to contribute to reduce the gap that clearly is still present. And as you said, I think we all look forward to the result of the global survey that we started actually from your project in Brazil, to have more data and to have a global picture and to try to contribute to bridge somehow the gender gap. I know we are running a bit late, but I hope let's see what Everton thinks. If we have time for a couple of questions from the audience. Everton, what do you think?
Yes, well, let's go with 2 questions and we can wrap up from there, because it's a bit late and we have to finish. Just go.
Okay, so we have one question for Theresa, which I read from the audience, which is, did you aim to predict the impact on local culture by implementing the project in society? It is observed that the intervention caused interference with the community.
No, actually, I didn't plan to to observe the impact on the local culture. So I'm really, from education, I'm a hydrogeologist, so I was planning to look on the water and include the society, but I'm not trained in to deal with the issues on what this has an impact on the culture and the society. And that's also why I'm now really active with Viviana together on the social hydrogeology network, because many of us have realized that it's not enough to look only on the water, but we also have to understand how the groundwater interacts with the community, with the society. And we have to learn a lot in this realm, I think.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Theresa. We have another question for Anna from Barbara Zambelli. Anna, what is the possible impact on women on the new sanitation regulatory framework in Brazil?
Obrigada pela questão, Bárbara. Esse é um impacto muito grande, né? Quando a gente percebe que se são as mulheres que são mais afetadas.
Women are those more affected by the lack of water. Women go after water, women collect water, so they are affected by the lack of basic sanitation, especially Black women and poor women. This is a reality that we see. Women are the most affected by the lack of basic sanitation.
Thank you, Anna. We have another question, which I think is going to be a kind of challenging, but I will try to address, and maybe it will leave space maybe for future debate. Is from Letizia Vittorino. How can Brazil solve the problems related to scarcity and low quantity of water available to the population? I know it's challenging. Maybe you can also refer to one of the previous or future initiatives in the framework of the IEH Brazilian Conference.
Muito bom, não sei se eu consegui entender a questão.
Very well.
Mas realmente esse é grande desafio que
it's a great challenge, yes. We're fighting to understand how to solve this situation of inequality problems in relation to water. And I believe this begins by discussing dialogue, awareness, increasing awareness of the population. Something similar to what Theresa did in India could be done here. The population is a little more informed about the importance of not polluting water for having better quality. For example, so quality water, and where there is willingness to avoid polluting the rivers. All of this begins with dialogue, awareness, more awareness. Yes, it is a challenge, but we need to begin. So dialogue, talk, it's important to talk to people about this.
Thank you, Anna.
Okay,
Everyone, you want to add something?
Well, I would like to add something. I felt a bit, sort of mentioned, because when you use the data from the congresses in Brazil, Anna, and it is hard. I know, because I'm organizing events for so long, right? And it's not easy to find women to speak. We need to have them closer. So it is a good initiative to put data and to show the results. But what I would suggest is for the women participating, like you're doing today here, just to step up. You have to step up and show your faces and mention, because there's nothing really, from my experience, it's not really against or anything. It's just the way it is. And to change that, it needs, some to break the inertia. And to break the inertia comes from active persons, active women, because otherwise it just stays like it is. That's my feeling from what I have. We try, when we put together events in IEH or the associations that I've been with, we know in academia, we have lots of women participating, usually more than men, as you mentioned. Now we have a number, I didn't know that. But then you have to step up. that's something that needs to happen by, action of the persons who are necessary to participate. Because we think to have that, and so that's just my feeling. Another thing that I would like to mention, and that's related to what Theresa mentioned, it's if you read the book from Ryszard Kapuscinski, Ebony, in Africa, he mentions that one of the big revolution in Africa was the plastic bucket, because people could carry water. It was easier to carry water around, and most were women doing that. And I remember that I relate that book with an experience, a talk that we had with Ryan from the Ryan Well Fund Foundation. They fund wells in Africa. And he mentioned that for the wells to have a long life, they have to work with the women in the communities, because women take a good care of the wells, and they know the importance, and men don't care. So if you want to make something happen in Africa, as they do, they work with the women in community. So there is actually a very good, as you showed in your presentation, either Theresa and Anna mentioned, there is a strong relation between women and water. And we just have to make this happen on a higher level. That's what I see.
Indeed, okay? Absolutely.
Right. That's what we're trying now. That's what we're trying now.
Sometimes you have to look for things and you will find them. So probably also it's from both sides, right? So we have to step up, and there might be on the other side, like open, as in your case, of course, to leave space also for the other half of the world, let's say. So, and I think this is going to happen more and more in future, also thanks to the joint action that we are all of us engaged in. So both from work, science, and community involvement. So we're all in the same part of the story, I think. If Viviana, I can ask a question. Yes.
May I just want to also answer to Everton. I think it's not only about women to step up. It's important that women step up, but there are so many things, like there are so many studies showing that men are more likely to employ other men. Men are more likely to invite other men as speakers, etc. It's not, of course, there are so many women who want to do something. They are also stepping up, but they are not seen. They are not invited. They are not taken seriously. And I think I just want to mention or to highlight that it's not only the side of the women who have to step up, but maybe sometimes also men to step back. Thanks.
Yes, sorry if I wasn't very clear. I was just mentioning about on congresses. But congresses, we have a much higher education. It's much easier for that to happen. On the market, for jobs, I don't think it's just like that. Just women stepping up. I agree with you. It's not going to happen that way. We have to have a conscience and make it happen in like we're doing today here. So we have to talk to the employers and make sure that women have the same. I agree with you. But on congresses, we're talking on something that we have a higher education from people that participate in congresses. So it's, and from my experience, I see an openness, but it's more like inertia. They just don't do it. It's the way it is. So that's why I mentioned this stepping up on congresses. It's very easy to access people on the association and get closer to that. That's my feeling, okay? But on the market, I agree with you. It's not that easy. It's not that easy.
If I can add something really short, I agree with both Everton and Theresa and Anna. It's basically, the problem is that we're creating a vicious circle because at sometimes women are taken less seriously than men, which then in turn makes them scared to speak up, or they already anticipate the fact of not being taken serious. So it's very important that there is capacity building, that people become more aware of these issues, of the very issue of gender inequality in the water sector, that we have data to support it, that, you know, there's just, we know a lot, but there's not sufficient data to inform us correctly on the next steps to take. So I believe we have to all continue to do research and to push forward to just make this happen.
Yes.
And this goes in line, probably, if you want to have a quick comment on one of the other questions, which is again from Letizia, which is asking how can we reduce this inequality between men and women, both in access to water and in the publication of technical papers. So it goes both in the sector. I don't know if you have a quick comment on that.
Yeah, I would say that, like what I said in the conclusions of the presentation, it's a bit, there are multiple pillars that we should take into consideration there. Like one thing is, for example, having better and sex-disaggregated data, because if we have data but it's not disaggregated, then we cannot see the hidden differences between, for example, the access to water, or how both men and women take advantage or benefit from specific policies, or from specific grants, or from capacity development and all that. So that's crucial to understand that. On the other hand, yeah, there needs to be more awareness on all levels. That starts with stakeholders in general, the wide public, but also decision makers. They need to be aware of this, of these challenges, so they can make the policies more gender responsive. They can implement these specific considerations to overcome gender inequality in the field. But of course, it's far from being an easy process.
It is indeed.
I have one point that struck my attention when Anna presented the numbers. I don't know. I'm the editor of the Brazilian Groundwater Journal, and I don't know why we have less women. If we have more PhD women, why we have less papers with women as first authors? Our journal, our main editors just working with me are women. They take care of the journal for so long already, and we have women working there. And I don't know why, since we have more PhDs participating, we would expect, because there's no, I don't know, segregation or, discrimination for publication.
Isso é dado interessante, Everton, porque a gente até discute isso na Associação Brasileira de
That's an interesting piece of data. We discussed this in our association. What is happening? We have more women with postgraduate courses, but many times they can't publish articles or participate in events. So we call this the scissor effect. They have other responsibilities, so there are more articles from men. This is something that we have to do more research on to understand why. But women are now have more doctorates, more women with doctorates, but in articles we have a predominance of men. It's a reality, but we have to know more, do more research, go after more data to understand why this happens.
All right, guys, I think our time is up here. I'm sorry, our talk is very good. I can make a commitment with you. We still have to organize. We're working on the organizing committee with Ricardo, and women, you're here. We need you to help to bring more women to our Congress here. We're organizing the event, and we can have a better number. The next step is right there. We have a few more months ahead of us, and let's work together to make this happen. Let's see if we can make a difference. Okay. it's a
We have a
commitment.
deal.
We can count on you, definitely. Right?
Sure. Yeah, can I just add quickly that in case people have other questions or you want to continue the debate, I think you can still write them in the YouTube chat, and maybe the speakers can have a look and we can continue the debate. Also, all our contacts and information are online. So if you want to get in touch with us as a network or with the individual speakers, please don't hesitate, and we will be very happy to continue the debate and the discussion because I want to also thank the organizing committee for giving the opportunity to organizing this session and starting this, what I think is going to be a very interesting topic and the beginning of future discussion that are going to be very maybe challenging, but will lead for some good changes in different aspects of groundwater and gender.
All right. So I think we're getting to the end. So we may I make the final
yes,
reading here, please? All right, I'd like to thank you, Viviana, very kind for putting this together and helping us organizing. I like the session very much, and I hope we can work together. And so I would like to thank the participation of Lawrence Thuy, the Gender and Communication Officer from UNESCO, Theresa Frommen, Research Fellow at Humboldt-Universität in Berlin, Germany, and also IAH Socio-Hydrogeology Network co-chair, along with Viviana. And Maciel de Carvalho, Assistant Professor at Federal University of Jequitinhonha, I can tell you. And Mucuri Valleys. Okay, you keep trying, Viviana. I know it's a hard word.
I will practice before coming to Brazil for the Congress, hopefully. Then I will be able to say it properly.
Jequitinhonha, repeat with me.
For sure.
And thank you for all the audience for helping us. And please spread the word, share with your friends, like our presentations, tell everybody to make good for the groundwater. All your help is welcome. We hope that the content is useful for everyone present. Follow ABAS and IAH and also on social networks, download the event app and participate on our WhatsApp groups. And you can talk to them on our WhatsApp groups. You're very welcome. Okay, so thank you very much and see you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Oh.